Well, we're going to close today talking about home prices. So this is from one of my favorite places, what used to be called CoreLogic, now called Cotality. And basically, here's the bottom line up front, everybody. Year-over-year price growth slowed to 2% in April of 2025. Now, this is June. Like, yeah, why are you talking about April? So it's always a lagging indicator. We get this information between 30 and 60 days after all the data comes in. So at the end of April 2025, we had the year-over-year price growth was still at 2%. That's growth. That's still growth. 2%, not zero, not -2, 2 with a plus handle in the front. Now, single-family attached homes did better than the single-family detached homes did better than attached homes. Attached homes are townhomes, condos. Those had a decline of 0.08%. Not 0.8, 0.08%.
Minimal.
And that's the first annual decline since 2012. It's noteworthy only because it's the first time it's happened in the last 13 years. Yes, despite the collapse of 2008 and 9 that 2012 followed. And yes, despite all the shutdown that happened in 2020, this is the first time that you see single-family attached homes posting a decline in the last 13 years.
Wow. One of the things I will say is that the name switch up from CoreLogic to Cotality, wild. Like
that's your take. Like that's your take, bro.
The connotation just goes insane. Like, okay. No, but honestly, for me, I can't really how do I say it? The data, is the data. It is what it is. Truthfully, it's good to just have a good measure of where this is at. Unfortunately, it's not like something that I could take and run with and say, hey, I could do this based off of this information. But it's just good to know that, hey, things are moving. Things are getting, hopefully more affordable. But we know that that's not the case.
But that's only a barometer of, I think, the cost of the mortgage at this point, because house prices are where they're at. Even if attached homes are having this decline, again, you're going to find pockets where the decline is way faster than the national average. It does mean something, though, that the national average has finally dipped into the negative territory, but it's really by such a small amount. It's not as impressive as it might sound on the top, but it's still a growth chart. You're circling right here. It's a growth chart, not a contraction chart. And they're even saying that the forecast is greater than the 2% that we saw right now. So all this talk, all these headlines, all these bullet points, all these pundits on TV, all this stuff talking about house prices flattening, house prices declining, the real estate market catching fire, all this, we see it all too. We see every single one. Some of that just goes to my inbox every day because I'm on lists for stuff that watch out for these things. But then, if that's all the case, why is it that we have a forecast of 4.3% year over year from 25 to 26?
And that's where it just becomes so you can't really trust it. I guess what I'm trying to say is that you can search up in the internet and find whatever it is that fits your point of view. And whatever it is that you look at, you can make your decision based off of that, but you have to read, in between the lines at one point. You have to come back to reality. And the reality is that things aren't coming down, and it doesn't look like they're going to be coming down anytime soon. Therefore, if you're embodying that mindset of I'm going to wait for the market to drop, you're going to continue to wait. It just logically doesn't make sense. Mathematically, we're seeing it doesn't make sense. And by the data that's being gathered day in and day out, where do we see that crash? Unless something black swan completely out of this earth that we just don't foresee coming happens, okay. But from what we're seeing, everything's just pointing to the indicator of.
Do you want to know what I think this 4.3% projected growth thing is?
Yeah, please.
I think it's economists and analysts knowing that the rates are at their peak. I think it's them knowing that rates are where they're at and they only have one direction to go, which is down. Yeah. If the Fed is look, the Fed's been where they're stuck, right? They've been at their rate now for how long?
What excuse do they have now?
Okay, right? Okay, so put that anchor in place. Okay. More inventory is hitting the market and it's not causing a rapid decline in home prices.
Boom.
Okay. Mortgage applications are on the way up, right? And if rates are also, let's say, at their localized high for the last 12, 24, 36 months, and they're only going to stay or go lower, which way will prices go? Prices will go back up because if rates go down, then we can afford more house and prices will go up. I think that the forecast of 4.3% basically being twice of what the 2% is we're already looking at from last year, is knowing that all these conditions are what they are, and the only thing that's going to move next is going to be mortgage rates staying or going lower, and people having to get houses at that rate and at that price.
Yeah, and I honestly feel that they're holding off until the last minute that they can to just, cut the rates. But I just feel that, it was inflation one day. We got that under control. The labor market, okay, we seen what will happen last week. So it just comes to what other excuse, what other pivot are you going to say to avoid the fact that, you need to cut the rates?
They're gonna look for the Fed to be so data reliant. They don't have an argument to. They don't have many arguments left to stay where they're at.
Exactly.
In my opinion,
I agree.
They definitely have no argument to raise them. And so their only option is to take them down. Now, the 10-year yield has to follow. The mortgage-backed security market has to follow in lockstep, and that's fine. But again, remember it might have been a month ago now. Remember when we were talking about how the most housing permits in the country were pulled by 2 states? Texas and whoever was number 2. But combined, they pulled 24% of all the new building permits. They would not be doing that if they thought there was an impending collapse on the horizon. It's not that's terrible business. I'm not saying that builders have made the right choice forever ad nauseum until for the end of history, but that's terrible business for having been in business for so long, so many decades, and built so many hundreds of thousands of homes that you'd be doing that now in a market environment where you don't expect rates to go down. And people are expecting rates to go down.
100%. And for the longest time, we saw the sentiment of builders not being there. 100% of them not wanting to build. So it's what and changed?
Now that's back.
What changed? So if there's something that hasn't been brought up to the podium, something that hasn't been brought out to the public, maybe they are working on things on the back end and we just don't know. I'm confident that hopefully that's what they're doing, and it would make sense because obviously if they time it correctly and hopefully I would hope that they're working on it in the back end. They meet at the right time and things clash correctly.
Yeah, I just think that this is an admission that all the conditions that we currently are facing are stuck in place. Yeah. And the one thing that's going to move that would cause this to all look different in the rearview mirror is rates.
And I think also maybe this is just my personal opinion, but I feel maybe Jerome Powell doesn't want to also give off hey, I'm doing what they're telling me to do. So he's also maybe in a way putting his personal, thoughts on this and saying, I'm going to hold my ground.
Maybe, but not
that's
all.
Just my argument.
Yeah, but not all the Fed members agree.
Yeah,
that's the other thing is these Fed members, they go on TV, they write articles, they write opinion pieces about things, and they do hit pieces here and there, and so they don't all agree on whether they should stay or why they should stay. You certainly have a lot of other financial analysts. You have Wall Street and other people who are big players in financial and economic space saying, "Hey, the Fed needs to drop rates," and it's not because they're some sort of apologist for the president. They're just saying that it doesn't make sense to stay here given the conditions we have, given jobs the way they are, again, all the reasons that the Fed said they needed to keep the rates where they're at have now gone away. And they're still holding, even though all the arguments they made to keep it there are now not on their side of the table.
I just feel that, bringing down the rates would give a huge ease to a lot of people, a little breathing room. And although they don't have to tank the rates, easily just release the pressure, and I think that's what we need. I'm going to bookend this
with the way we started our conversation today. So if home prices have if home prices have grown 2% since last year, and they're forecasted to go up by 4.3% from 25 to 26, this adds more fuel to the fire that if people are in financial distress and need to do debt consolidation and they need to use a HELOC, do it. Do the HELOC, because this is also the other truth of the HELOC. If you get an adjustable rate HELOC and rates are the highest they're at, in the foreseeable future that they will be because the Fed has to drop rates, then that means the cost of paying down your debt with a HELOC will decrease over time as well. So if this is the localized peak, then you can see yourself stepping down in your cost to pay down your debt by doing the HELOC versus just carrying your credit cards around and trying to pay them off a lot slower.
Oh, 100%. And just to add on to that, you can do a HELOC not on your primary house. You could do one on your secondary house. You could do one on your investment property as well. So you don't have to put your property, up for collateral, but you could still reap the benefits by using one of your other properties that somebody else is already paying for that mortgage. So what I mean by that is that, don't be afraid to take, advantage of what you currently have right now, because down the line, if your goal is to either sell or refinance that property, you're just getting access to something that could help you out in the time right now. And down the line, there's a huge opportunity for you to be able to make that up. I have a client that is taking out his equity right now from a property out in Florida. He knows he's going to sell his house in a year or two. So he's like, might as well just play with my equity right now. If I need it, I have it. If I don't, great. I don't have to use it, but at least I can feel comfortable knowing that I have that in my back pocket if anything happens.
Yeah, no, that's super smart. I mean, people who are in a position of homeownership right now, you have choices.
Yeah. And
that actually, it actually is funny as I say that. That might actually work against you. Sometimes it's easier to make a choice when your back's pinned up against the wall. You're like, I only got one way out. I got to find my way out of it. Sometimes making choices can cause some, analysis paralysis. But if you are in a situation where you're like, hey, I got to consider cash out, or I got to look at my home equity line of credit, home prices are kind of going to be staying where they're at, especially if you are in a major metro city where the prices really accelerated during 2020, 21, 22, and they've flatlined or slowly ticked up since then. You're most likely in a safe category, and there's not a cataclysmic failure on the horizon for yourself. So take a look at that as we kind of wrap up for today.
Yeah, no, my final thoughts is just it's definitely season. It's the season to be brutally honest with yourself, brutally honest about your finances, brutally honest about everything in your life. And I feel that once you're able to get to that root and really see things clear, you can really plan forward. And I think it's time for you to, if you're in a situation where you want to change and you want to make things a little bit different, you have a house. I feel you can, weigh your options out, really look at everything. And if you're in that position where you definitely need the help, you have a house, I think it's time to take away that emotional point of view and say, hey, I have the help. I know where I could go to get the help. It's just going to require bringing it into my property or my mortgage. But look at it like this. If that was your only option, would you take it? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But if it's your option right now that you're able to take it, I feel confident and I believe that your house is the one thing that you're always going to, no matter what, protect. So I feel that doing that, it's just going to put you in a better position to be more motivated to get out of that high debt right now, or just be able to, stay confident and make sure that you can continue paying your house, knowing that you don't have all this debt on this end.
Yeah.